katoa, ko Jenny Cameron toku ingoa. My name is Jenny Cameron and I'm the Chief Transformation Officer for Manatu Ahumatua, the Ministry for Primary Industries. My role is to drive the delivery of the Fit for a Better World roadmap. But I'm not here today to talk to you about myself. I'm here today to talk to you about what the Fit for a Better World is, what we're doing, and how you can get with it. To put it simply, Fit for a Better World is the strategic direction and a roadmap to face into the biggest challenges and seize the opportunities for our food and fibre sector by 2030. So when I say the word 2030, what does that date mean to you? What do you think New Zealand's going to look like in 2030? What are you going to look like in 2030? What might the businesses you're in be like in 2030? For me, I just think of my children being 19 and 16, and they're already on track to be taller than me, so that's both terrifying and exciting. So because we work in the food and fibre sector, we break things down into seasons. So 2030 is actually only 8 years away. So that's 8 winters, 8 summers, 8 blustery autumns, and 8 glorious springs. And if we're anchoring in 2030, what do we need to do with our food and fibre sectors to get ready for where we want to be and where we need to be by that time? How do we want our businesses and our communities to be, to do, and to feel so that they're thriving by the time we get to 2030? We know that our sector's feeling divided at the moment. It's a game of two halves. Many out there feel challenges. They just see threats. They feel overwhelmed. They feel threatened by the rise of alternative proteins and synthetic agriculture, the rise of technology. They feel threatened by the rise of veganism and climate change activism. They feel left behind, they feel undervalued, and they feel like no one's got their back. But we know also from surveys that there's the other half of businesses and community leaders out there who feel incredibly energised. They see opportunity everywhere and they feel very hopeful. They feel like this is the first time we're having a real and important conversation about food in New Zealand. And they also feel like there's never been more investment streaming into this. There's never been more innovation and cross-sector collaboration. And so on both sides, there's frustrations. On one side, they're feeling like it's all going too fast. And you'll know people like that saying, slow down, stop, make it all go away. I just want it to go back to like it was 20 years ago. Thanks very much. Leave me alone. But on the flip side, there are those saying it's going too slow. We've got to get on with it. Where are the vertical farms already? And on both sides, we know that it's not surprising because we're going through a major period of change, not just in New Zealand for our food and fibre sectors, but this is global, as we've heard. We're in what we're calling the third major wave of change in terms of the fabric of how we do things in the food and fibre sector in modern New Zealand. So 1973 was the UK joining the European Economic Community, which forced us to very quickly have to diversify our markets. And we shifted from looking at Europe to Asia Pacific as our customer base. 1984 hit, and many of you in this room will remember the economic reforms of Rogernomics, deregulation, removal of farming subsidies, but also removal of trade barriers and protection, so fully opened up to the world. And that caused massive and significant shifts, not just for our food and fibre sector, but also to the fabric of New Zealand, which some of that's still being felt today. And now we're in the 2020s, and the next wave of change is this focus on environmental impacts. Some of this has been building for a while, but what we've got is a coalescence of focus on that. Right from the United Nations, the World Trade Organization, World Health Organization, conversations around sustainable food systems, trade and climate, trade and environment, through to our banking sectors and our financial institutions, where we've now got the task force for climate-related disclosures flowing through into the credit arrangements that businesses will be feeling in the food and fibre sector. And that's soon to be followed by the task force for nature-related financial disclosures as we look at the importance of ecosystem services and nature-based solutions. And in New Zealand, we were the first to adopt the Sustainable Agricultural Finance Initiative. And then we've got it in insurance sectors. We're looking at climate change mitigation and adaptation and risk. And then government regulation, of course, we've had significant legislative reforms across RMA, or soon to come, water, climate, biodiversity, so that focus not at national but also at local council level. But most importantly, the focus is now coming from our customers with the big C and the little c. So when McDonald's is advertising regenerative milk and regenerative meat into all its advertising, you know that the change is really coming. So all of those global supply chains are now moving to needing carbon footprinting, scope 3 footprinting, circular economy, product stewardship. All of that narrative is now coalescing, and then through to consumer trends. So with this, it's not surprising that we've got that sense of big shifts and changes. And what we've got to do is make sure we're adapting, we're innovating, we're clear-eyed, we're open, and that we're seeing the opportunities before they hit, and we can ride the wave of change. Because the biggest risk we've got is if we avoid it or we ignore it. So what are we doing about it? Well, we have a vision, we have a strategic direction, we have a roadmap of activities that are based on evidence, and we're going to get there because we have to. The vision was set by the Primary Sector Council in 2019, and it's to provide outstanding, ethical food, fibre, drinks and products that speak of our land, oceans and people. Tai ora, tangata ora. Healthy world, healthy people. And if we have to tie our healthy world at the heart in an interconnected way, then we will achieve the outcomes that we need in order to be where we need to be in 2030. And what are the outcomes we're looking for? First, kauniki tauwhiro, sustainability. So by 2030, zero carbon food and fibre sector, low emissions, improved water quality, enhancing biodiversity. Whaihua productivity, not only maximising and enhancing our existing products, but achieving new products and new value streams, opening up more trade and market access opportunities, achieving 44 billion additional export revenue on top of baseline, and we're on track to do that now. And whakarutia, inclusivity. If there's one thing COVID has taught us is the importance of people. And so what we've got to do is make sure that we are attracting people into our food and fibre sectors, that we're keeping them when they come, and that we're growing them and upskilling them. And this is such an important thing, and also to show that our food and fibre sector is a really exciting place to be. The challenges are great, but the opportunities are great too, and we need talented people to help us get to that future that we want to get to by 2030. The reason why those three things are really important as well is because they're like three legs of a stool. Those pillars need to be balanced. Because in economic terms, they talk about them as the impossible trinity when you've got three things that you're trying to trade off against each other. But if we pursue productivity at the expense of sustainability and our workforce, then we're going to be out of balance, and we can't sustain that. But equally, if we pursue sustainability at the expense of our communities and livelihoods and don't bring people along, or at the expense of viable businesses, then that will be out of balance. And the three-legged stool that's out of balance needs to be propped up. So with that, if we can find that sweet spot in the middle where we're achieving all of that, where we can have sustainability, viable businesses, bringing communities along, achieving better workforce conditions, and also one of the key things in inclusivity is food outcomes. And that's a very live conversation we've got right now. So that trilemma there is also very similar to what they have in the energy sector, and I used to work in the energy sector, and they call it, and the World Energy Council calls it, the energy trilemma, where you've got to balance energy security, energy renewability, and affordability. And if those get out of whack, then that's when culture and politics has to respond. But what we've got is how do we turn that trilemma into a trifecta? And there's some real ways that we can do that. The approach we're taking is that we've got to be vision-led. We've got our vision. We know where our North Star is, where we've got to go. But the key thing that we've got is we have to be business and community-led and government-enabled. And this one, I get very excited about this because this is really, really important. Because the mahi to do this is with you in the room and you online. And government enables through catalysing, seeding, supporting, setting the right frameworks. But being fit for a better world is not one action. There's no single bullet to get where we need to do. It's going to be thousands of actions and decisions and choices to balance those sustainable, productive and inclusive decision points we need to do to get there. And working to listen to our businesses and communities, what you need to help you get there, and how then government can remove barriers or support and fund and seed and set up the right frameworks. That's how we're going to achieve this. Because we have to do this together, and we have to do it across our food and fibre sectors as well. Because one thing that's very, very clear is we're all interconnected across our oceans, our land and our people. So what are we doing specifically? Well, 10-year roadmap, year 1, setting targets, building partnerships, seeding ideas. Year 2, first wave of outcomes coming through, developing acceleration opportunities. And actually, this is where there's some really exciting things happening in the industry transformation plans, particularly in agri-tech. For example, there's been much more investment flowing in through collaborative actions, seed funding happening for innovators, and also getting our innovators ready to pitch for that investment, which is so important. And really driving into what are the opportunities we need in terms of agri-tech, in terms of manufacturing, in terms of food and fibre businesses, in terms of aquaculture, horticulture, listening to where the barriers are, listening to where the gaps are, and then driving and seeding that opportunity and getting there. We've had over 430 million so far from 2018 through to today from public and private funding going in through the Sustainable Food Fibre Futures Fund. And that's going into everything from looking at the opportunities and the research on regenerative agriculture. And very soon, over the next couple of months, there's going to be some really significant pieces of research to look at the opportunities in a New Zealand context and how we can seize the momentum and the opportunity around regen, but also make sure it's science-based. There's been significant investment going into alternative proteins. There's been significant investment going into the opportunities around seaweed and aquaculture. There's also research happening around methane inhibitors and the opportunities around those science and technologies. And recently, there's going to be a joint venture between 7 of New Zealand's major food and fibre companies and the government to really drive the research and development into tools so that we can tackle the biggest challenge we've got for New Zealand, which is those agricultural emissions. Year 5, we're going to be embedding the programs, building blocks in place, adjusting and adapting because we never know what's coming around the corner. We've had COVID, tragic war in Ukraine, monkeypox. So we don't know, but we've got to keep adapting and innovating and building those partnerships. And then by year 10, we'll be smashing those targets and then going on to the next thing because, of course, we know by 2030, job won't be done. And, of course, we're always, because the one thing we know in life is change is constant. And it'll be a beautiful straight line and everything will go exactly to plan. Except it won't. Because we know that that's life and the path to success is never a straight line. There will be a need for adaptation. There will be things that work and don't work. There will be, as we said, the tragic war in Ukraine, which is going to have long-term impacts and working through that with grain supplies and fertiliser. But new opportunities will come because we know that in challenges, that's when then opportunities happen as well. And what I want to stress in this too is through all this, it's not an either or strategy for New Zealand. We've got to be looking at both because we've got the insights, we can see where consumer trends are going, where technology trends are going, and financial and other institutional trends are going. So that's where it's got to be an and strategy for us so that we stay agile. And who's behind us? So we have fantastic people in the sector supporting challenging and correcting our course when we need to be. And what we've got to be really looking at is what's in front of us right now, because there's plenty of those challenges and opportunities, but also that we're looking 30 years ahead, so that we're looking at what are the next trends coming through, and we can stay agile and ensure that we're capturing where we need to go. So we have Mike Peterson as the chair of the Food and Fibre Partners Group, and that's a sector and government group. Tracy Haupapa is the chair of Ngā Pōwhiro Taimātua, which is the Māori Primary Sector Forum, and they're going to be releasing soon a Māori Primary Sector Prosperity Strategy. Te Puna Whakaronui is the primary sector think tank. It's the first independent think tank for the food and fibre sector that New Zealand's had, and that's chaired by Lane Jager. And they've recently, they're doing insights pieces on looking 30 years ahead and how do we stay agile and are we capturing the right things we need to do. And then we have government agencies. It isn't just Ministry for Primary Industries, but Ray Smith is a very strong supporter of this vision and this strategic roadmap. We also have Ministry for the Environment, New Zealand Trade and Enterprise, Ministry for Business, Innovation and Employment at the top table, ensuring that all of the resources we've got from government is activating towards the change we need. And also, who's behind it? It has to be us here in this room and online, because all of us together making these changes is how we're going to get there. And I like to think of it like a big river. So a lot of this might not be rocket science, it might not be different, but what we've got is some really core building blocks of how we're going to do it. And if we're all heading in the same direction and we know what our vision is, then we'll get there. But what Fit for a Better World and the initiatives that we've got creates a current. So if you want to accelerate and get there faster, you can get into the slipstream, accelerate those programs. But what we're also trying to do is ensure that the half who's out there right now who's feeling overwhelmed, that they've got solutions, they know where to go for help, they know how to adapt. Doesn't mean that we're denying change, because change is inevitable, but we've got some solutions that our food and fibre sector can have. But it also means they know how to diversify. So join the slipstream, Fit for a Better World. How are you going to get with it? Kia ora.